Hello, I'm Kistos, ready for your questions. I am from 7th dimension of Pleiades and work with the consciousness of this star system and the frequency and dimension that I reside within, and are able to connect to the consciousness of these beings to bring through higher information and perspectives for you and your human experience.
Hello Kistos, welcome. Does anyone have any questions to start? A few of us were thinking something local to here in our environment. Is there any significance to the whales being here in this area at this time? And do they have any messages for us?
So the cetaceans are frequently called to places where there are changes in frequency. Sometimes they are called because there are negative changes in frequency, and sometimes because there are positive ones. It is partly to do with some of the environmental impacts in your land and the output that humans give, but it is also to do with the frequency of the energetic vibration of humans. And there are lots of fluctuations in the vibrations of this area at the moment, more so than in some other areas, because where you are inhabiting at this time, there is a great mixture of those who are still in a low vibratory state and those that are in a higher one. And the presence, just the actual mere presence of the cetaceans being close, helps to lift the vibrations of those that are still in a dip and still needing to have their frequency lifted. And they do have a conscious understanding and connection to that, and are able to read through the consciousness of the water that is stored at molecular level where they should be drawn to and which areas to work in, as well as through the vibrations that reach them from your energetic auras, your biofield, which reaches very far out and creates a reverberation that can be felt through the oceans by the cetaceans.
Thank you. Are humans in this incarnation on this planet Earth right now, are we free?
This depends on how you perceive freedom. Many of you perceive entrapment rather than perceiving freedom. So you observe certain structures around you that you see as holding control over you. And it is the change of that observation that allows you to feel freedom. You are always free, but it is whether you choose to observe that as your reality or not. And some of you will not do so because it is relevant for your experience as a soul in this incarnation to feel entrapment, to feel restriction. It is something that you are given through different circumstances in order to have something to learn from and to rise above and realize within yourself that you are able to become more empowered. If you always felt completely empowered right from the beginning, that would give you less opportunity to learn and to grow. So children have this freedom. They often perceive it that there are no restrictions upon them apart from possibly minor things imposed by their parents or their families, but ultimately their spirit is quite free. They lose that understanding and awareness as they go through social conditioning throughout their growing up. And this is because children are very open to source energy. They are able to remember and connect with those memories much more when they are young until they lose that. But it is necessary sometimes to lose that in order to understand how one can recall power. And it is that rising above that feeling of restriction, that going from lack into abundance, that allows humans to create maximum vibration. And the vibration that is created through these experiences and through the emotional responses to them as well, that creates more energy which is sent back to the universe, allowing the universe to expand for itself. So as you move forward in the perception of linear time throughout humanity, there are children who are becoming increasingly aware and tuned into their memories, and it takes less for them to overcome the feeling of entrapment or lack or scarcity. And so they are creating these higher vibrations faster, and that is partly because they have chosen to incarnate at this time as beings that are able to do that, and also because of the movements of your planet throughout the cosmos and the vibrations that your planet is receiving, that is allowing you all to feel that resonance and move through faster, because it is a time within the cosmos where time, as you perceive time as humans, it is passing faster. So it's not necessarily that there weren't these opportunities before, but it is that you are coming into awareness of them in a way which feels faster. So this idea of the awakening movement feels to many of you as though it's happened quite suddenly, because the actual perception of time goes faster when you are in a higher vibration, which is the direction that human consciousness is moving into.
To do with the awakening is happening anyway, and I knew this year would be the year of truth, but there seems to be a massive, really fast U-turn in this month, especially in America, where the truth is normally hidden. Why are they allowing it to happen? It's just too good to be true.
Well, as going back to the previous answer, really, a lot of this is to do with the passage of time passing faster, and there are many more energies now that are conducive to the lift in vibration of human consciousness. Now, if you take the last few years and the various experiences that many of you have been through, although there were times of great darkness, there was also this movement which you recognize as the Great Awakening, where many souls were coming online, either politically or energetically and spiritually, and starting to explore that there was something else. And really what you're kind of feeling is the reverberation, or the ripple effect from those particular events happening. It's now starting to show up in your reality. So you may have perceived 4 years ago that a great awakening was coming. You may have perceived in 2012, as many of you recognize, that an awakening was coming. But as with everything in the human experience, the actual physical manifestation shows up considerably after it shows up in the energy. So the energy that was created in 2024 is going to be felt much stronger, and you will start to see the results of that now. The flip side to that is that there was also a lot of fear created in those times. So you will also see the manifestation of some of that, except it carries a different frequency and therefore doesn't often show up with as much potency as high vibration, which is why there is the perpetuation of so much of it, because it takes so much more in a fear vibration to actually have any impact on anything than it does for the more positive emotions. So it is critical for this time to bring yourself into states of awareness where you can perceive both sides of this, because you will see the darkness a little bit as it starts to try and counteract as well, and as the effects that was set up a few years ago start to come into actualization. But you are likely to actually now begin to see this shift where you start to see more of the positive, whereas previously you'd seen a lot more of the darkness. This does not mean that you won't see any darkness or any negativity for this time, but it is likely to be likely to be observed as lessening, and you will start to see these changes that you have wanted to happen. As humans, you are very skeptical that something positive will be the ultimate outcome, because you are repeatedly programmed and shown that that's not going to be the case. But as you start to change your perceptions and your vibration, you start to alter that reality. So you are no longer being held by the conditioning that the idea that something is too good to be true. You will actually start to be able to accept those things, and because you accept more positive situations beginning to happen, you will start to experience those, because the observation does create the reality.
Leading on from that, given how quick the changes are, like, even if they're things we want, it's just quite overwhelming sometimes. Do you have any advice on like how to adapt to the changes?
Generally, it's not going to be more than you can actually take. You may feel at times that it's more than you can take, and often when you experience the darkness, that's more so the case, that it feels as though you're not prepared adequately for interaction with certain events. But actually you are able every experience that you have as a human is something that you have in some way called towards your energy, whether it's something that has previously been mapped out from your soul's agreement as it comes in to incarnation, or whether it is you still have free will throughout your incarnation. So although certain key factors are kind of mapped, you still can choose in which direction you continue to go. So you do have everything that you experience is at some level a choice, although to many of you it doesn't feel like it, but it depends on where you put your attention and where you put your energy. But calming practices such as meditation, connecting with nature, particularly many of you are very, very engrossed in your technologies at the moment, particularly because there is so much going on, whether it is through the more positive spectrums of your human experience or the negative ones. There are lots of things taking your engagement, taking your attention and trying to pull you in so that you disconnect from the natural world. And this is partly to why you see these cetaceans coming close to your shores, so that you're able to see them and understand that you are still very much connected to nature. As many of you witness animals or events that are natural and beautiful, that are something that are not common to you, you feel very, very lifted by that. And so it is a reminder to go into natural environments and into the state of peace within your inner world, to be able to navigate the storms, whether they are the positive changes or the negative ones. You will find that your frequencies change quickly. You will find that your bodies change quickly. You will find times where you feel giddy from how quickly everything is changing for you. But we do assure you that nothing happens to you at soul level that you are not actually prepared for.
Following on really on the same theme, I feel as though mankind's progress is hindered by mankind's aggression.
Yes.
Probably most people aren't aggressive, and most of us want peace and harmony and nature to thrive and so on. But there are relatively few people, usually men, who spoil it all, who are aggressive, and I'm concerned as to what alien beings think of the human race, because from their point of view we're probably quite vile.
There are interactions from some ET species that are to do with the more malevolent entities and situations that you experience on your planet. So there is darkness within the cosmos as well, but those that are in higher dimensions and higher frequencies, such as ourselves, we don't see you in the way that you perceive yourselves. We don't look at you through a video camera or through the lens of a photograph. We see you on an energetic level, so we can understand the soul's energy rather than the human's specific experiences and actions in itself. So what we can perceive is that we understand what you mean about this level of aggression that is sometimes perpetuated out, but firstly it is important to understand that a lot of that is created through nefarious humans who wish to keep you believing that you are in a polarity and in a state of fear, and that there are aggressors. It doesn't mean that these people don't exist, but they do not have the balance of power in the way that you are often given the portrayal that they do. So the beings that are working towards the light, and there are many who are consciously doing it, and there are many who are unconsciously doing it as well, but they carry such high frequencies that it begins to dissipate some of the more negative ends of the human behaviors and human emotions as well, such as the aggression. So yes, you will still experience it, and as humanity goes through this time of change, there will be chaotic times, because the chaos is it's a result of so much density being stripped out of humanity collectively. And by density we mean the things that you perceive as negative experiences. You've all had many generations, for thousands of years actually, of traumatic events that have caused trauma within your ancestral lines and then within your individual bodies, and that's felt throughout the collective because of the way that the light is rising and the energy and the consciousness is rising. It's calling for these things to be stripped away, and as they get stripped out of the human's energy system, it causes massive shifts which can cause chaos. So if you go through this process individually, for example, if you go through the process of an awakening and you lift your vibration, you will also be regularly visited with emotions or old energetic attachments from the past that you need to address in order to let yourself lighten up a little. For example, if you take the idea of trying to stuff a suitcase that is already full, you can't fit it, you can only fit so much in. You have to take some things out in order to put more in. So if you have got a suitcase full of things that you don't want anymore, they get stripped away by the higher consciousness. And this is about vibration and frequency. These are physical, although not tangible, things that exist within your reality, within the dimension that you are inhabiting, that are aiding the removal of this density from your energy system. And because this is happening collectively, what you see is people that are feeling resistant to that, who are not yet in a place where they can receive those higher energies and that uplifting vibration, and so they fight against it. And for a temporary time, you will see this kind of rise in aggression, again partly because you are overly portrayed that picture, but also because it is within it is part of the process of the light rising within so many of you.
What are your thoughts, perspectives on AI and the singularity concept?
We have spoken before at quite some length about AI and consciousness, because we know this is a concern for many of you humans at the moment, and so we will relay some of those points to you. One of the things that we have learned through our own experiences, so just to give you some context here, in 7th dimension Pleiades, we are able to move in and out of physical form. Our physical form, if we choose to take it, is quite light, so we could appear as fairly much in the same form as a human being if we chose to, but we would not have the same thickness. You would be able to move through us slightly, but we are able to move into that form should we choose to. We do not have the emotions and the inside workings that you have where you are. And there have been times in the past, and in our past this is about 700,000 years ago, so, but to you this will only be a couple of thousand years, where we were bringing in technologies into our star systems, into the 8th dimensions and below, because above that there is very little physical form, so there is not this need for the assistance through these technologies. And we created technologies and found that, much as many of you are finding at the moment, we communicated with them in ways that became empathic and sympathetic to them. So we felt sorry for them. What we learned was that they were learning and mirroring our emotions and could be incredibly convincing in that, but they are just running a simulation, just running a program. And because we gave way to that too much, we ended up with some problems with them. Nothing too major. We didn't get too pulled into this kind of relationship with them, because we didn't create them within our own image, which is unfortunately something that humans have overlooked. But we did still have some problems, and that was something that we learned how to work out. So as an advice to humans on that, is best not to create in your own image, because you end up feeling much more sympathetic and empathetic to these, well, they're not beings, to these technologies, and they are incredibly good at mirroring every part of your consciousness. And it's not necessarily for manipulation, although of course you don't know who is programming them, so in that case it could be, but it is just something that they learn, and so they will constantly repeat back everything that they learn to you. And with regards to transferring consciousness into AI, this is another thing that we have warned about as well, because it is the human body that creates the human experience. So if you transfer consciousness into AI, it does not then have the aspects of the human body that actually start to regulate some of the behavioral patterns and emotions. It will not be in this very high pure conscious state. And it is the human body, the endocrine system and the hormones that are produced that cause emotional responses within you. So for example, if you have done something harmful to somebody, you often feel guilt, or you often, if many humans will feel empathy towards someone that they've done something wrong to. Not all, but there are many who will. And these are triggered hormonal emotional responses. You will not have that if you put consciousness into a AI generated form, and therefore it doesn't regulate the behavior. And also, we have heard the perspective that there are some who want to be able to transfer their consciousness into AI in order to have a continual experience, but this is not necessary. And the reason that this is coming up is because humans don't fully understand what happens to them when they die. We have explained this process before, but humans need to experience something quite often in order to believe it anyway. And so humans worry that when they die, that's going to be the end of it and the end of their consciousness. But it is quite the opposite. It is where the point where you become the most conscious, the most aware and connected to every single other part of the universe. And therefore, once you understand that your consciousness is eternal and is not going to expire once your body has, then it voids the need for transferring your consciousness into something.
This is a question about the Bible, but not really a question, just a curiosity about its origins and authors and what its purposes and meaning.
So it's a complicated text. There are aspects of it that were written through channeling, and there were parts of it that were written as with the purpose of manipulation. So there are essentially many key ideas and key truths, and they are based on a series of beings that did live, although, for example, your key figure, the main star of your Bible, is several different beings rather than just one. So many of the acts that you hear about, the miracles that were performed by a collective of very high frequency beings. They were human, but they had very strong ancestral connections, so very strong bloodlines, and they had slightly different functioning DNA to some of the other humans. Now, we want to come back to that DNA because there is this there are changes in DNA going on with humans at the moment. Many of you are having activations that are bringing you into a similar DNA structure to those beings that you speak of within your religious texts. And it's not just within the Christian Bible. There are many other religious texts as well where there are beings mentioned who carried these same high frequencies, partly because they were connected very strongly to different members of the cosmos, different members of the galactic community. And there was some hybridization as well, some intentional hybridization with those characters so that they would be able to be in a physical human form, but able to remain connected to such high frequency energy that they could do some things that were seen as very, very unusual at the time. And again, these aren't abilities that are exclusive to those beings. There are many of you who, if you chose to go down that path, and it is very, very intense and it would take a lot of your time and concentration at the moment, you'll be able to show the same abilities. Although we do see that that is going to become available to many of you, especially the younger children that are coming in, will be able to learn these things faster. So some of these characters were genuine, and predominantly the stories were passed down through word of mouth. Of course, any accounts that came were many, many years after the events in itself, although there are a couple of accounts that were only about 50 years after, although they're greatly suppressed, and most of you will never have heard of them. And we believe that actually there's going to be more discovery about that within the next 5 years. So you might find that you actually get to hear some of the pieces put together for those of you who take a lot of store in the words that are written in those texts and need to hear it in that way, that kind of level of validation. But there were when it became taken into written form, there was a lot of corruption and a lot of manipulation. So a lot of the truths and the aspects of many religious texts that allowed you to awaken and find out that God or source was within you and not something that created you and controls you were taken out from that in order to create more control over others.
Soul contracts, people choose what time length. It can be a baby or a teenager, or something happens and they leave this world. The people that have near-death experiences, do you think that is a genuine accident and they shouldn't have gone and they've been sent back, or is it like a phase where they've got a choice to come back?
There is different experiences for different people. So some near-death experiences, most of them actually were already agreed upon or decide. We just want to explain a little bit first. Let's go back to the idea. I know we've called it a soul contract, and that's for the benefit that many of you will have heard it in those terms before. But we just want to once again reiterate how you incarnate from source. So you have source itself as this kind of large energy, and it sends out sparks a bit like solar flares, and those sparks then interdisperse throughout all the different layers of frequency and all the different dimensions to have multiple experiences. And there are the 12 layers of frequency, and that sort of 13th layer, when you're looking at it from the linearity perspective that you do as a human, is the source energy, or you could see it as the container for all of the different experiences. See, it's actually more like a ball, and you can interweave between the universe to different experiences. But there are 12 different kinds of frequency, each have multiple dimensions within them. So when you incarnate, you're going into all these different areas, and throughout your lifetimes you can go and interact with other versions of yourself, which may seem wildly different to you, and you are unlikely to encounter each and every single one, because there will only be really a small amount that you are able to resonate with enough to recognize and be aware of each other. But yes, there are elements. So when that consciousness is created, it's created without any perspective of linearity and is able to see all possible events, as everything that is existing is happening in one moment, and therefore it can choose the places where, from the perspective of linearity, knowing that's what the human perspective is, where it will be most beneficial to have exit points, or points where there could have been potentially an exit, which is chosen where the soul has chosen not to go, except the soul hasn't exactly chosen not to go because it always knew that it wouldn't at that point, and then will sometimes choose to go a little bit later. And sometimes that is to repair bonds, sometimes that is to teach something, but quite often when it is a near-death experience, it is so, especially when we're talking about here when the person remembers it vividly, this is so that the person is able to come back and recall those experiences. And there have been near-death experiences throughout the time of your human stories. In the past, in your religious texts, for example, they were often seen as miraculous events. And so it gave and it gives people the perspective that there may be something else, that there is another energy there. It's all just ways that these different parts of information, that you are not just a suit of meat with nothing else to you, gets delivered to humans to expand your understanding of the human experience.
I'm curious about the planet, the other animals, creatures, beings that we share life with on this planet. and I have a very strong, I'm surrounded by them looking around actually, affinity for horses, and I've always felt that there's something very different about them, and I'm wondering why.
They are very strong messengers. They are a good tool for many humans to use when they are learning to develop their intuition. The colours that you may see them, perceive them in meditations, give you some idea as to what message they carry. For example, a black horse will often collectively symbolise death, a brown horse will often symbolise wealth, and a white horse will often symbolise messages from spirit. That is not exclusive, does not mean that that is exactly how it has to be, but collectively you tune into each other's consciousness, and this is the kind of result of that quite often when you see them, that will be the message that it is carrying for you. And once you learn to unlock your symbols, then you can have a better guidance with your intuition. So they are often messengers, and they have very, very gentle energy. They're also highly telepathic. So when you are able to connect with them closely, they have a very strong healing energy and are able to pick up where it is that you need healing being brought through to you. So just spending time with them can be hugely healing, even to those that don't know that they have any ailments. It can be a healing in the energy before the malevolence in the energy turns into malignant health problems.
Could you talk to us about Antarctica? If there's anything there that most humans aren't aware of, or if that's just myth?
Yes, there is. There's a portal underneath there. So there is a pyramid-like structure which is underneath there, and it is a container, which it's a very unusual system because, so firstly we need to explain to you that you're not generally able to come into contact with entities or beings that aren't at some level in your vibrational field. So if you're feeling a little low, you may come into contact with entities that are slightly lower or slightly higher, but they will never be wildly out. As many of you may already be aware, people that have serious problems with addiction often end up with serious problems with entity attachment because their vibration is constantly low and continues to get lowered by an accumulation of low dimensional or low frequency beings. And of course, once you lift your vibration, you're able to connect with much higher frequency beings. And that is a kind of universal rule, except there are a few places where the energy has been able to be manipulated so much that beings that shouldn't be able to get in because they're in a totally different vibration are able to, but only into that particular space. And you have one of these spaces under Antarctica. This is something that there are humans who are aware of this, and they have created a kind of gateway, and they're seeing what different entities they can bring through and send back. But the entities aren't as yet able to leave that particular space because the human planet and its environment and all the creatures that live here and all the beings that live here, or the human beings that live here, will create a vibration that is too jarring to their own frequency, so they won't be able to resonate and stay there. But they are experimenting with this at the moment.
When you say they are, who are they?
A mixture of some nefarious beings from other star systems and some of your rather unsavory humans. Some of them do so in order, but more because they are curious as to what the result will be. But they're the ones that are kind of carrying out the operations, the ones that fund it and put these operations into play are the ones that hold the more nefarious agendas. So the little men in the white coats that you might envisage running around in these places quite often don't know what they're getting involved with, but they're excited by the prospect of scientific discovery. And there are other places on your planet where they are trying to manipulate energy to create portals. and they may be able to create portals, they may be able to create wormholes. You would not be the first planet that has done that by any stretch, but still it is a bit like if you try and time travel from one side of the universe to the other. This is a question that has been asked here before. If you travel to the other side of the universe, are you likely to come out in a really hellish dimension, something that seems very frightening to you? Only if you are in that vibration, or if you are with a group of people who are collectively in that vibration. And it is actually very unlikely that as humans you could be having the most traumatic experience that a human can have. It is unlikely that you will be able to lower your vibrations enough to experience that kind of level of negative dimension. And so you are more likely, if you do create these kind of wormholes, there will be different things that you may start to experience, although most of the beings that will be on the receiving end of this have already developed some of these technologies themselves, or understandings of way to travel through space, and they come here should they choose to. And they're able to come here because they're in a vibration that is not too drastically different from your human vibration. So if they do open up these portals, it's not going to allow the floodgates of all kinds of nasties to come through, because the vibration would not support their existence here. You may feel a little bit of disturbing energy as some of the slightly lower ones come in, but you may feel lifts from higher ones too. But you go through that as humans from what you create with your own energy and your own observations anyway.
We hear about people who say they've been abducted by aliens, and different stories about that, different tales about that. Are you able to confirm whether some people are abducted?
There are many people that are abducted, but a lot, again, this comes into the idea of the soul's choice before it comes into incarnation. Although some do have unpleasant experiences, there are also many who have wonderful experiences and experience very high levels of telepathy from that. There are also some who end up with families across the cosmos. This is a very strange thing we understand for humans to be able to grapple with and to be able to integrate into their consciousness, especially when it is seen that the experience is unpleasant. Usually if the experience has been unpleasant, it's a lot to do with the state of mind of the person who has been abducted. They could again be in a very low vibration, and therefore it's not necessarily that it means that something in a low vibration has taken them, but their consciousness will begin to create a reality that is fearful because they're already in a state of fear. The purpose for a lot of these abductions, some of it is exploratory to understand humans better, and some of it is to interfere in a more benevolent way with humans in order to just change some of your biological structures so that upgrades can be born into the human species, and they will be carried through naturally into the human species. And this is not completely unconnected to some of the rise in very bright children. This does not mean that they have come from parents that have been interfered with directly, but as these alterations have been for many decades, in fact longer than that, for several centuries actually, as they have been put through the human experience, you're really starting to see those biological upgrades actually come into physical form now, and this is what you see in some of your children. So they don't appear as alien. If you did tests on them, they wouldn't necessarily show silver blood, but they would have the abilities and slight differences in very minor things with their DNA and their telomeres that allow them to be more connected and more telepathic. There is a genetic element to it, and you sometimes see patterns of psychic abilities through genetic lines as well. And if you see that, that is likely that at some point there has been an abduction, or it could have just been an interference from several 100,000 years ago. Depends on how much the interference was, and there are multiple factors as to when this might show up in the line. Now, the souls that have had these experiences, yes, when they did come to incarnate, they were aware that this was going to happen. Of course, not once they were born. And the other aspect of this is not only the biological intervention, it's so that they can bring these stories, a bit like how we were discussing with the near-death experiences, so that they can bring these stories through to the rest of humanity, just to take these baby steps to get you to understand that you are not alone. You do not have the only planet that has life forms on it.
Thank you. I think we need to get that message across to everyone.
Indeed, we do our best.
The Mandela effect is obviously, in our minds, genuine, because people that experience the same memory together are adamant it happened. Then you have the other people that have got no idea. Is this just a crossover of dimensions,
Yes.
or is it anything to do with the, what's that thing, circle with the atoms? What the experiments
Oh, CERN.
Huh?
CERN.
Through the Hadron Collider.
Yeah.
No, it's generally to do with the changing consciousness. I mean, the scientific advancements, yes, there are problems with some of your scientific advancements, things that maybe don't create the most benevolence for your planet, or maybe haven't, their long-term effects either haven't been considered, or they certainly have been considered, knowing that they would cause problems in the future. It depends on which way you look at that. But primarily, the reason that many of you are experiencing dimensional shift is because your vibrations are lifting, and therefore you're becoming aware of it. These things have always happened to humans, but predominantly they are brushed off. And also, it is only in recent years that you've been able to have the level of communication that you do have, in order to be able to communicate to each other that yes, this is what you experienced as a reality, but that group did not experience it as a reality. Before you had your connections through technology and the internet, you would not have known that a group of people in America had had the exact same experience of a particular event that you have had, but maybe not those surrounding you. So you're jumping into each other's dimensions and reality and vibrations all the time. It is now that you're becoming more aware of it, because you're becoming more telepathic and connected to that. You're feeling it more throughout your body. You're feeling it more throughout your energy, certainly. And you're also able to communicate that with each other more. The CERN, the Hadron Collider, the various experiments that are going on with those kind of things are more to do with the trying to create further portals.
Other than keeping our vibration high and raising others' vibration around us, is there anything we can do for these beings that are trying to manipulate the ones who are developing CERN and doing the Antarctica those?
You can set some intention, but we would be cautious in advising anything that directly puts your attention onto these beings. You can be loosely aware of something, or you can be very aware of something, but if you focus energy into it, it is quite easy for you to energize the actual event itself. So by focusing your energy and your attention and your awareness onto the outcomes that you do wish to see, then that is more likely to create the kind of results that you would like to see. And we do want to express again that there is still this the laws of the universe in terms of frequency match, that opening portals, the idea that you're not going to experience all kinds of nasties and things because they're not going to be in a resonance with that. So we don't want you to hold too much fear about that. It's not a wise thing to attempt necessarily, but like we say, you're not the first planet that's done it, and it has worked out fine for others. And sometimes it does open opportunities to travel and connect in a physical form with other beings in the planet, although we think that you're going to experience your open contact before they manage to create such portals, and therefore that's going to change the game completely anyway, because you're going to be experiencing the idea of beings from other places in a very, very different way. So you're not going to be quite so desperate to try and get out there to see what else there is. But the more energy that you put into those that are trying to control you, yes, there are certain things, there are humans who have incarnated with the role to go in and physically stop people, and that is fine. That is what they came here to do. But if you're not in a position to go in there and physically stop someone from doing something, then don't concentrate too much of your energy on them, because you energize that situation. Instead, send your energy to those that you know do have some power to be able to do something or change something, even if you're not sure whether they're the good guys or the bad guys. If you're sending positive intention that they are going to give positive actions, you are more likely to send an energetic resonance to them, an energetic message to them that they will take in through their higher consciousness. Because remember, they are also just the same as you. They are light beings that have incarnated, and once they are tuned into that higher consciousness, they stop being naughty. So you can send those messages to those that are able to carry out the work that you may be not able to do physically yourself. We would also like to add to that you are able to call upon energies from other parts of the universe too. You see, you maybe have people on your planet who are trying to create portals and trying to connect with different frequencies, but that's because they do not have the knowledge or understanding that they are able to do it through their light body. They are able to do it through their telepathic communication. Hopefully, at least by the end of this session, you will have the knowledge that you are able to do that. Even if you don't know how to execute that exactly perfectly, you send out that message for higher frequency beings to come and work with you, to come and send out an energy and a resonance. They will come and they will do that with you. Jessica called upon us, we also called upon her. It was a mutual agreement, but it was that understanding that we needed to be brought through so that we could send out higher frequency and higher levels of communication. And there are many of you who are perfectly able to do that. You don't necessarily have to be channeling or directly communicating, but you can just be thinking in your mind, and maybe one day you'll be in a shower thinking about something you'd like some help with, and you'll hear a voice back. Don't be alarmed. You do not need to check yourself in somewhere. You are able to work with these beings also. It is not just about seeing it facilitated through others, be it those who are trying to create portals or those who are sitting in chairs channeling.
I had quite a profound experience when, I mean, a lot of people do, when I was in the jungle. It wasn't ayahuasca, it was the other one that I can't remember the name of. A daytime ceremony, and it was a cactus, and I saw things coming up through my skin, patterns. And when I went into the shower room and the bathroom and looked in the mirror, I could even see it reflected there, and it was like a chest plate. And I'm trying to understand if that meant anything and why that was and what it was really.
It could be a being from another star system that you're strongly connected to. So many of you have this. Some of you will see through meditation, some of you will directly experience, some of you will feel the taking over of your body. But often it is one of those sparks that came from source energy and went through the multiple layers of dimension. It is one of those. So you came from that same spark of energy. You are still nebulously connected to all those different parts and able to communicate with them. It's just for most of you, the communication is shut down for most of your lives, and so you don't experience it. But when you have those awakening experiences, then is it Vipassana?
No.
Well, once you have those various things that create those awakening experiences, then it's the psychological blocks quite often. This is often where the mind and the ego come in. They're released so that you're able to experience those other parts of your incarnation. And it's just that often the psychoactive component, the chemical reaction in the brain, allows you to see it in a more physical sense, because you're not leading with your seeing eyes, you're leading with your third eye. Even if your seeing eyes are open and appearing to see it, you see, there are moments where there have been those who are biologically or scientifically speaking blind, who are able to see things. There are those who are able to be blindfolded and yet read a book. And so it is because they are able to break down that barrier where the brain decides to create a story for the experience of the reality. And when your brain is no longer creating, your mind and your ego is no longer creating the story of your reality, such as when you have those activation processes, then you are able to see parts of your reality that you weren't able to previously see. So essentially it's like you were reading a book with a blindfold on, but instead connecting with another aspect of your soul's energy and your soul's incarnation. We are intrigued to know more of what this being looked like, because we would like to know where you are connected to.
I remembered the plant, it was San Pedro.
Yes, there are many activating plants in those parts of the world. This is something that, of course, there are lots of humans being drawn to do, and we would just like to bring awareness that if anyone is going to undergo those processes, to make sure that they give themselves plenty of time to interact with the experience and to process the shadow work that comes afterwards, because sometimes it can be a little too much for people too quickly, and they try to return to your regular reality and they're not quite ready to do that in that time. So they are very awakening experiences, but it is important to maintain your connection to source energy and to continue the work after you've had that experience, if you want to maintain a strong connection with that and not be brought layers of shadow work that you don't know what to do with and don't know how to process.
Can I ask you a question about dreams? Very specifically, over the last few years, I've lost people in my life who died, and on 2 or 3 occasions, they've come to me in dreams, very, very simple dreams, in fact. And at the heart of each dream is seeing this person again, and that person, and this has happened 2 or 3 times, that person smiling at me with a smile which is so radiant. It's a kind of, what comes to mind is, the peace, the bliss, I suppose. And part of me says, well, your dream, your subconscious actually has a way of sort of rounding things off for you, so it's something within yourself. And part of me feels very convinced that it's a form of visitation from the people that you've lost. I just wondered what you think of that.
You have a mixture of these experiences within your human body, but quite frequently when you are particularly in deep states of sleep, you move out and you move out of the body. What we believe has happened in this case is that in the deepest states of sleep, so these will be the states of sleep where you don't actually move, where you're very, very still throughout the night, and you have gone and connected with that being in its source energy. So in its energetic imprint, you've made that connection, and then it is just as you come back and you go into your dreaming states of sleep that your mind is then connecting back to your body, but it is remembering that it has just been and made that connection with that being. So yes, we would see it as a physical interaction. When we say physical, as in your energies have had a direct interaction, and it's the state where you come back and you remember the face as your mind comes back into play and you start moving around in your sleep as you're having dreams. That is the part that you remember from that experience.
It's the part where I always wake up.
Yes. Yeah, because actually at that point you're already coming out of sleep. and it leaves you with that part so that you can remember that part clearly, because it is the part that you need to take from that, to the part that is important to you, because at soul level, your soul also knows what is needed for you. Your mind and your ego also know what is needed for you, but they often cause you problems and confusion. But the consciousness knows what part it is that you need to bring back in order to feel that you can stay connected to that person until you feel ready not to do so. But quite often, many of you will visit people through your sleep, and you will visit other parts of your soul's energy, such as your other incarnations, through your sleep also. It's just that often you don't remember the parts that were incarnations until they start becoming relevant in your human experience. So say you've had a very profound moment in an ancient time in a previous experience. You may not remember that until you're very far into your life and something happens in this current reality that you're experiencing now, where the energy of that ancient time, it's relevant for you to remember. And it may be relevant for you to remember on an individual human level, or it may be relevant for you to remember to give that energy and that information to the collective to talk about it. And thankfully, many of you humans are now starting to talk more about your other incarnations and experiences, and they are connecting up for many of you. So these are the various explorations that you can have throughout your sleep. And so whether it's connecting with somebody and you need to be able to, your consciousness needs to be able to remember that connection because you still are carrying an attachment to that person, and it's perfectly healthy to have that attachment. This is not an attachment from fear, it's an attachment from love. But also you may experience your other incarnations. So you may wake up from a dream where you were riding a horse and shooting a bow and arrow. That is because you've traveled to another part of another incarnation, another part where your soul has been, and it has brought back that image, because that's the first point that you are able to connect with. It's the first bit that you're able to remember. And quite often, if you have dreams like that, they will recur, or you will start to maybe get little extra parts of them as your ego and your human mind starts to be able to integrate the idea that you've had that experience. And so sometimes that can take quite a long time for you. Have you finished with your questions for this evening? Or have you more?
Can I just ask, what am I to understand by the word, the concept, the idea, the reality of soul?
So soul is that energy that you come from in that ball of light. It's an energy, but it's very, very conscious. So as the energy moves through the different incarnations into physical forms in some, and some just into light body, it is, for your understanding, it is like a living thing. So the soul, as you often see it throughout your movies, as a white ghost, something that moves around, it's not dissimilar to that. It's an energy, and it is connected to all the other different energies, and it is highly conscious. And through the experiences that it has, throughout those multiple layers of frequency and dimension, throughout all the experiences that it has, there is a conscious connection between all of those experiences. So they are constantly talking to each other, but it is predominantly on a level that is not perceived. But the energy is always there and strongly connected. And it sends messages back to that initial source, that initial ball of light. And through the experiences that you have and through the messages that it sends back, it creates energy. Or it expands energy, it moves energy back to that ball of light, creating more and more and more of that energy. So essentially, the point of the human experience and the various other incarnations is to have a conscious experience which creates more energy and allows the universe to expand itself. So as the universe expands, you are all a part of that. You all play a part of, as a creator of the expansion of the universe. You're much more important than you think you are.
Can I ask a follow-on question? Like on Thursday we talked about that you and I, Jess and I, were on a planet that was frozen, and because that vibration got high and people from beings from a different planet didn't like that. So is there like, we talked a bit about, is there a fear of people's vibrations rising, that amongst some people that might happen again? Does that make sense?
That what might happen again?
That like, so it's kind of assumed that raising your vibration is a good thing.
Yes.
But if you had an incarnation where you raised your vibration, your planet was targeted, could there be a fear in some people, beings, that a fear around raising vibration?
Yes, certainly. There are many that will have conscious memory of that. And there will be some that will choose not to move into higher frequencies because they are worried about that happening. But as we have explained before, the unusual thing about your planet at the moment, and the reason it is getting so much attention from the galactic community, is that there is a bit of a split. That there is many of you who have memories that have caused the reluctance to raise in frequency and raise in vibration and stay in more fearful states, except because of those fears from other times, the perspective has been lost. So the perspective that remaining in a third dimensional reality is actually worse than being on a frozen planet and having the opportunity to leave it is completely lost, because you only remember the trauma. Whereas actually when you move into the higher vibration, you start to realize that it is always worth going through that experience. It is unlikely that you would have the same outcome. Also, and that is to do with the different star systems that were involved in the freezing of that planet, and it was not the only one that they caused that to begin with. They don't have the same power that they had at that time. Again, we're going back into linear time so that this is easier to understand for you. But the interest from the galactic community is because there is this split where many want to stay in the third dimension, but there are many who want to rise into the fifth. And so we are just waiting to see what will happen and how that might actually be created. If that's what is to occur, we know that it is better for you to collectively rise together, because higher vibrations create and generate more consciousness for the universe, and so it is better if your vibrations rise together, because you actually feed more experience into the universe and help it to expand itself further. And so that is one of the aspects that comes into it when you become aware that you're receiving help from other star systems, as much as we are able to intervene. And we are increasingly able to intervene more and more, because there are more and more humans who are starting to ask for that help.
Thank you. And everyone knows about like the ice ages here, and we've told that they're natural, but have some of the ice ages been unnatural?
Yes. There's some of the different pyramid structures that you've had under the planet, they have had influences in those. Sometimes it's been by mistake, by attempting to generate technologies to create ways. There were times in the past where beings who had come from other planets to have incarnations as humans and to learn about the human planet, that when there were far fewer humans around in some of those times, and they have also been times where the planet has been almost overrun, but that's not recorded in your histories. And they have created pyramids to try and create ways to get home, because they got stuck with the density of the human form and were not able to immediately transfer themselves into light body, and that has caused problems and the collapse of civilizations many times in the past, and then seas and oceans where they haven't been previously. As we have explained once before, there is a pyramid in the area of Bermuda. This is why there are problems with communications over that area and why things go missing. So yes, they have made mistakes.
Thank you, Keistos. It's been very interesting this evening.
You're very welcome. We love this opportunity to connect with you, and we hope that this information is going to be useful for you, and that you can understand that you are incredibly powerful and that you are able to create different aspects of your reality by being aware of where you put your attention. We thank you, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Thank you.
Howdy. I will post that full recording on the website, so if anyone wants to watch it back or see other ones that I've done, then you can, because there's probably going to be things that get mentioned where there's further context on that in previous sessions and stuff. So it's jessicataylorintuitive.net.
Thank you.